So anyhow, tonight I think time-wise, I'm just going to move along a little bit faster. Now, how many pen turners? So I know several of you were talking about, right? Okay, almost half of you maybe, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I started out with a mandrel, threaded mandrel. Put your tubes on there and the spacer bushings. This one actually was a #1 for an old lathe I had. And I found that the bushings were loose on here. They'd slide real easy, and they actually had a little play in them. And with the mandrel, when you're coming in like this and you're putting pressure on it, part of the issue was bowing the mandrel. Or if you're pushing hard with your chisel, which you shouldn't, but a mandrel that's not true, it's going to wobble. You're going to end up with a pen that's not round. The one I'm passing around, that's part of the problem. So some people said, well, we got to do something different. They came up with one other item is an adjustable mandrel where you can slide the rod through it. It's like a collet chuck here. And on this one, you have a shorter, you can do one blank at a time and less bow on it. So that helped a whole lot. There was another product that somebody came out with, and this was called a mandrel saver, because some people were getting bowed mandrels. So this goes in your tailstock. Where's your camera? I can't see the screen.
Oh, right here. Don't worry, I'm watching you.
Over here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So this #2 Morse table goes in your tailstock, and it's a live center, and it has a hole through it. So that way you could just come right down against your bushings and your pen blank. That way you're not out here pushing on the end of the mandrel. You're not bowing it. Your pressure here comes through your blanks right to the end. So that way, that was helped to eliminate some of the problems with the long mandrel. So that's good. I found that I was reading that some of these actually have an O-ring inside of them to help snug on the mandrel. And you do need to be up past the threads, of course. But this still wiggles around. I don't know if you can see that. It has play in it. So once again, I have error in my pens that I can't do anything about. So, in reading and looking online at all the different websites, somebody else had come up with turning between centers. And there's a couple ways to do this. Let me just have a sec. Here's a dead center. I just popped it in there. Dead center. You might want to get one of these. This one's carbide tipped. You pay a few bucks more for the carbide, but that way it's not going to wear. So a dead center, that's your drive. And then I have, this is a one-way center here, and I bought the separate 60-degree pen turning center to go in it. These just pop out and you put your regular center back in. So 60 degrees on both of those. So somebody came up with bushings which are between centers bushings. Okay. The standard bushings were drilled. They were loose on the mandrel, and most of them are loose when you put them in the pen tube. They're just not real snug. I have a couple here you can pass around. This one is a stock bushing like you buy at Woodcraft or wherever you're buying kits. It's drilled all the way through. See how short it is where it goes in the pen, in the tube? And this one is actually my worst one. So it just loose as all get out. So I turned one out of Corian, and it fits real nice and snug. You know, it's not perfectly round. I don't have a metal lathe. I turned it on my wood lathe, but it's close. So, you know, you can go between centers on these, but you still have that problem. So you got that, or, let's see which one it is. You have between centers bushings that are much longer in the tube, so you have less chance of it rocking, and they fit much better. And these are drilled 60 degrees on the back for those centers. Another company now has come out with some that are 60-degree centered plus drilled through, so you can use them on your mandrel or between centers. So, and these fit so tight, yeah, some of them are actually so snug I have to deburr the inside of the tube to get them in. So that's where I went to, because that way between centers, your centers are tapered, the recess in there is 60 degrees. You have it tapered, that way there's no play in it at all, and then they fit the tubes much better and they're longer. So it's just improving what you can do. The other method some people use is just to put the tube right between these two centers here without any bushings. And, you know, without the bushings, you have to measure and measure and measure and measure to make sure you don't go too far, that you get it just right. And, you know, calipers, a good set of calipers is your friend. Let's see. I want to back up a little bit and talk about prepping your tubes and drilling. The brass tubes, normally you scuff up the outside of them. Some of them you can buy now that are already scuffed for better adhesion. And I usually take some denatured alcohol, wipe them down afterwards, because otherwise I've got hand oils on them, or it might be some machining oil, so you want to get good grip on it. I glue with epoxy. I use a two-part clear epoxy and one of these little plungers, Home Depot, but I get the clear because normally they're a little bit yellowish. And if you have a blank that really shows through, like some of the acrylics or the lucite's especially, you can see the glue. On a bunch of those you will paint the tubes, but you can still see the glue, so then you paint inside the blank. After you drill a hole, you paint inside the blank so you don't see through. So, you know, sometimes you're painting both. The tube prep's important. I pass those around, but after I stuff the tube up, getting ready to glue it, I'll take my flat file and I'll go around the outside ends of it, because sometimes it has a little burr on the outside of the ends. And that burr is great for scraping the paint off the inside of that tube you just painted when you insert it. So do that, even just knock the corner off a little bit, it won't hurt. Just a teeny bit with a real soft, smooth file. So that helps a whole lot on your bushings on the tubes. So anyhow, let's see, drilling. Let me jump to drilling real quick.
Just a quick question, on the epoxy, doesn't it take it longer to set up?
Yeah, 5-minute epoxy, but I found that on the epoxy, especially on acrylics, it holds better, longer. Sometimes you'll be turning something and you get ready to push your pen together and the tube comes out, when you're using CA glue. So the epoxy has a little bit more give to it. Yeah, it takes longer to set up, but I'm not speed turning. I'll do it and then, tomorrow I'll turn it, or next week or something. Or, glue them up in the morning, turn them in the evening or the next day. I drill on the lathe. This is a pen turning chuck. Penn State and other places have this. And your blank can fit corner to corner in here. And you tighten it up with a couple little Tommy bars. So that way you can spin your blank. You don't have to mark centers, find centers, nothing. You just put it on there. I have a drill chuck in the tailstock with my drill bit. and you can drill that way. And if you have a long drill bit, or like a 7mm long drill bit, they have some wobble to them, and if it's sitting here trying to find a center right off the flat end, it's going to dance around and it's going to find a softer spot and start cutting. Might not be centered, and then it's going to start going off. So I have a starter bit. I don't know. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. A starter bit is nice, stubby, short. It has this one has like about maybe an 1/8 inch pilot on it, and then a 60-degree angle on it. So you can drill, with your drill chuck and just start it up onto the bevel, and then you follow up, and that gives you a center for your drill bit to follow in straight. Or you can drill and you can put a 60-degree in there, which fits your centers. If you just want to turn something that way. So center bits are helpful. They come in different sizes as well. I mainly just use a smaller one. So drilling, chuck like this, 4-jaw chuck like this works well to hold blanks to drill. Round blanks, either one, square blanks, they're both fine. The only time I find a problem is when you have an irregular piece of wood, odd shaped, and then it's better just to stick it between a stub center and your live center, turn it round first, then stick it in one of your jaws for drilling. That helps out a whole lot that way. So, okay. So that's just about it on the tubes. I don't know how many of you are using a barrel trimmer for squaring the ends of your tubes, because you want your pens to fit together real nice. You don't want to hold it up and see light through the joint there. And also, you need to be flush with the end of the tube and square, because when you put it between centers, you want the pressure to be even here. You don't want your blank longer, because as you're putting pressure on it and your blank gets thinner, sometimes you can damage your blank. It will delaminate. You'll see a little shadow, white area in there because you pushed it and it came loose from the tube once it got thinner. So barrel trimmers, I used to use them. I don't use them anymore, hardly ever. Barrel trimmer, then you get the sleeves to fit, or you buy different trimmers. But a lot of times you would snag, and next thing you know, there goes a big chunk out of the corner. So my method now is to take my blank, I trim off the excess on the bandsaw, get it real close. I go to my disc sander, or if you have a vertical belt sander, miter gauge and a block of wood, and I go in and I take it right down, just touch the brass. And then after that, I still want to make sure it is as square as possible. So then I will take a knockout rod. This is a pen disassembly kit, punches or transfer punches. You can get at Harbor Freight. A little bit smaller one. So I will put a transfer punch in my tailstock, okay? And on the headstock, this is just a bottle stopper mandrel with a piece of bottle stopper blank on it. I faced it off and glued double-sided tape piece of sandpaper. So I can put my tube on here, and with this spinning, I can just slide it right up against there and rotate it a little bit against the sandpaper. Sandpaper spinning, I'll rotate this too, but you just get one that fits the best you can. That way, I'm squaring this as best as I possibly can with what I've got to work with. My disc sander could be off this way, my miter gauge could be off a little bit. This way, square as I can get it. At that point, a little bit of CA, thin CA on a paper towel, and blot the ends. So even on these, but especially on wood, you want to seal that so moisture doesn't get in, or when you wet sanding, it doesn't get up into your wood. So anyhow, that sort of covers that end of it, I think. And move on a little bit here. I'm just going to jump into acrylics. Most everybody here turns wood, I think, so I'm not going to spend time on that. So here I've got the 60-degree bushings for this kit. You know, just like any other bushings, they're made for the kids. And I'm between the 60-degree centers here. So here I have a pin turning tool rest. I don't know, 3 3/4, something like that, 3 1/2. That was made up. So that way you can get right in there. And what I want to show you here is one of the ways that I start turning on a blank so I don't have any problems with pieces breaking off, or people call them exploding. You know, they don't really explode. There's nothing inside to blow up, but that's what they refer to it as. So anyhow, one thing that I've found, you know, there's several ways you can go about it. You know, you can take your skew, and I do, use your skew with it. You can take a roughing gouge and take these down some. But what I like to do first is take a parting tool, just a regular diamond parting tool, and I like to take a little bit right off at the ends because I want to reduce the size of the ends some. You know, you've got corners here, and I have sawed these corners off some. I've gotten rid of the 90-degree sharp corner, just knocked it off some, and I want to reduce the chance of having, you know, things fly apart. Yeah, you paid money for it. You know, you don't want to lose it. Now, some people say 3,500 fastest it'll go, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure. I think fastest it'll go, you end up spending more time beating and banging on it than you do cutting. So I think there's a certain speed that works well for the type of product and your type of tool, the diameter, etc. But I don't know what it is exactly. I just, whatever feels good. So anyhow, my method is sort of like peeling a little bit. I'm not going to go in and scrape straight into the blank. What I want to do is peel it. If you take a roll of paper towels, roll of toilet paper, you want to peel that off as you go. I'm not scraping like this. Okay, does that make sense? So what I can do is I'll start up here. Is light good, Fred, or is that better?
Yep, no, we're fine.
Huh?
We're good, looks good.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll come up here, I'm riding on the bevel, and then I'm just going to bring the handle up a little bit to where it starts cutting. And I'm not taking a full cut, I'm right on the very end. The end is the weakest part of the blank. You don't have anything supporting it out there like you do in the middle. So I just come here, I raise the handle a little bit, and then you just sort of follow it in. As the diameter gets smaller, you just follow it in a little bit. So, take it down a little bit, come back and get another bite, like that. Take it on down some. You see the ribbons? Once you get round, then instead of little chips, then you're getting ribbons. And that's what you want to see. So, same thing down here. If I take a full bite, it seems aggressive and more chance of chipping the blank. Now sometimes I use carbide, and I've seen you know, some people demonstrate carbides, and they just take them straight in to the blank in a scraping center, and using a square one. Sometimes they end up taking the corner and using the corner to go back and forth, and the corner is going against the edge of what they're cutting. And chips are flying everywhere. And I'm thinking, okay, chips are not good. You know, I feel like that's not safe. Also with my round carbide, when I would take that in that fashion, it would tend to grab and jump in and just tear the blank apart. Sometimes not too far and you're still good to go. Sometimes you're sunk. So I found a method with that seems to work better too. But with the skew, same thing, just like you're doing with wood. Lay it down. I'm at a 45-degree angle to the blank here. You're riding the bevel, and then I just lock it up to pick up that edge there. And you can start cutting like that. And you want to cut down here closer to where it's sitting on the tool rest. You can flip it over and do it that way too. but you just want to be down close to the bottom of it. You don't want to be cutting up here and the thing flip down on you and catch. So you can skew your blanks down. Just depends on, and then you can run back the other way. Once you get rid of some of the corners, it starts sounding smoother. And I mentioned rough and gouge. So on this, I like to turn it at an angle, like a skew. Instead of going straight in scraping, you can. Well, I like to angle it like a skew and cut like that. So sometimes I can take a rough and gouge and I can take a blank down just almost totally finished, all with rough and gouge. So sharp tool is your friend. That's the main thing. So it's almost round here. Now, we're talking about carbide. I prefer to use my round versus the square one. And one thing I've found works for me, it's a little bit different than what they tell you. Instead of going in straight, I like to go in like 4 o'clock, down under a little bit and raise my handle. Because that way, it's not going to grab. You know, it's turning away from it. It's not going to grab into it and dig in. And I've had better results with that. And also, you don't want to drive straight in, because as you drive straight in, you're picking up more surface all the time, and there's more chance for it to grab a hold and tear out your blank. So I like to drop it up like this, and I'm below center, and it turns to. Right now I'm not getting ribbons as such, yes, somewhat, but not quite the same as the others. So if this is getting too smelly, let me know. Some of the acrylics are kind of strong. Some people turn when they have their garage door open or a fan. So
Is the surface smoother with the easy tool, or is it smoother with the skew?
well, that's what I was going to get to. With a round tool going against a flat surface, you're going to have ridges. Yeah, you just are. If you have a one of the square carbines or the R4, then you're going to get a smoother surface, because that's just a little bit arc. You don't want a true square one because the corners catch. But what I do, once I get my blank just about where I want it, and see here I can, it's got a few ridges on it. So here I'm getting rid of some of those ridges that was there from the carbide. But I will take my skew as a scraper, and I'll still be a little bit high on the handle, like a negative rate scraper, and I can use that, and I can take off the humps. You can see the shiny spot where you need to take off more, and here I'm not down to the bushing, so I'm not going to take the time to do that, but I'm just getting this round. But I'm using the skew as a scraper. Sometimes if I'm doing a long pen, like this one's called the Zen from Craft Supplies. This one looks great with a straight barrel on it versus a humped barrel. Also, when you lay it down on the table, it lays straight instead of going like that because of the weight. A lot of them try to do just a little tiny arc to the barrel just to give it just a little bit of curvature so it looks good. You want it to sort of follow the curvature of the pen. As the pen goes up, you want to try to just continue that arc on up. You'll see a couple of them over here, made this years ago. See how fat it is? It comes up here and then it goes boom. It doesn't work good. Keeps up. So you learn a little bit about design style that way. But on the Zen to make a straight blank, sometimes I'll take a piece of sandpaper and a block of wood and go across there, just to help make sure I get nice and smooth and straight, because people are going to run their fingers on that, and if there's one ripple in it, they'll find it. So, also, another little handy thing to have on hand, this little brush, nylon or brass, you know, little Home Depot cheapies. That way you can brush those ribbons off without touching your blank. I find too often, you know, demos, different places, people got their hands all over the blanks. Oh, you need to go some more, you're not down the bush while it's running. And, you know, I think common sense tells you don't do that, you know. But we do too often, but, you know, we need to be safe. Normally I'm wearing a dust mask, eye protection, you know, face shield usually. I'll have a vacuum right behind my lathe, sucking as much as I can away from me. I'm in a garage, so I have garage doors open when I can. Right now, this is very good. I feel one tiny little rigid place in it, but otherwise it is very good right there as far as being round and smooth. Now, when you're working to a pen, you have your hardware components for your pen. They're a certain size, and you need to fit them. These bushings are much closer to being accurate than the inexpensive store bushings. But pen components vary. You get a Sierra pen here, you get a Wall Street 2, or a Napoleon, or a Gadsby. They're all the same pen, but sometimes they vary just a hair. It could be a couple thousands. So your calipers, they're your friend. You measure your pen part, you measure here. You know, you can measure your bushing, say, okay, if I go to the bushing, I'm dead on, or, you know, I need to be a hair bigger than the bushing to fit the pen. So in the end, you want to take that pen, you don't want to feel a notch there where your, you know, hardware fits and doesn't fit. You want it to look out, you know, turn out real nice. So anyhow, I think probably what I'll do now, I'll just stay on the acrylics tonight, and if you let me, I'll just sort of go towards the finishing side of things and buzz on through that. I like to put a rag over my lathe. You know, when I'm wet sanding, I don't want to get stuff on it. But at this point, this is very, very good. And you know, normally I'd be down to, you know, close to the bush and checking my size. And on these, you want to be just about exactly your final size, maybe a thousandth or two large, because you're going to sand some. So what I'll do first is this is actually some 240, but it's worn down. So normally like a 320 or 400, depending on how smooth you are. And I'll do this first, just to get rid of any little ripples that were in there. Okay. Some people take them off. They don't want to sand their bushings down. Or if you're doing wood, you can sand your metal bushings. You sand the steel onto your blank, and on a wood blank you'll get this gray staining from your metal bushing. So starting there, that's one of the ways. Buy quality sandpaper. I have sandpaper from Home Depot, and it works fine. Sometimes I get scratches, and then I was reading, and then I started using better sandpaper. Some people say Klingspor makes great paper. These are some of those wavy discs, you know, to go on your sander. But they say that the grit is more uniform. You don't have 2 or 3 sticking up that scratches your pen. So these are great for wood pens. They go from 150 up to 800. Woodcraft has these. Barry Gross sells these. Arizona Silhouette, Barry Gross. He sells a lot of the finishing stuff that I use. So anyhow, if I jump on towards finishing here, this is at the point where I start wet sanding. You have the micro mesh pads. That's abrasive pads, and there's 9 different grits. You have to be fairly smooth first before you start on these. Or I have these acrylic sanding pads. These are made by Barry Gross. He sells these, and there are 6 grits here, 1 on each side. And on these, let me see, I was looking for, here we go. On these particular ones, they are coarser than the micro mesh on the low end, and they're the same at the high end as far as the grit there, like the 12,000. So the coarsest one, I never use it because I'm already smoother than that. Like on this blank, I won't even use the second one because it feels like it's coarser than what's there. So then I'll start here. And what I do, wet sanding, I take these little cups that come off the laundry detergent, and I will use a separate cup for every grit because I don't want to put this sanding pad back in the same dirty water that this one was. If any grit comes off, you don't want to pick it back up. So I do a separate one per. So here, you can speed it up a little bit. The water helps cool it. If you're doing wood, you slow it down. So on here, when you're sanding, I hold the pad like this, and you probably can't see it, but you're getting a little puddle of water up here on top of it. And that slurry, you can see that starting to turn white. Here, does that help, Fred?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you can see that slurry starting to turn white. That means you're cutting. It's taking some off. Remember back when I told you about sealing the ends of these? It has another purpose too. When you sand acrylics or plastics, anytime you're sanding or scratching, what happens is they turn white. Just like if you scratch, a plastic piece, it's going to show up white. And when I put the CA on the ends, that makes the end, watch that, that makes the end more the final color. It seals that whitishness of the sandpaper on the ends. Because if you have a clear one, like some of those that are clear acrylics, you don't want to end up with looking through the edge of the clear blank and seeing the white end. Okay, somewhere. Oh well, disappeared on me. Anyhow, I take scissors and I'll cut these in half, and I'll stack it up. I'll cut it in half again, then I'll cut them in half again. I get like 8 strips because you don't need a whole lot here. So I'll take one and I'll wipe it off, while I'm sanding. This is already dried, but I'll wipe off in between, and I'll have a whole stack of these cut up. So then just pop on up here to the next grit, and usually in between grits, when I turn it off, I will sand lengthwise with the same piece. I'm not putting much pressure on here. I'm letting the pad do the work. When they're new and fresh, they cut very nicely. So you don't have to spend much time. And then just hit them like that on the ends. I'm not going to get into C8 finishing tonight because of the time, but I'll take this one all the way finished. So like that, and you wipe it down. Then you've got your nice light. You sit there and look at it in reflection. When it's dry, then you can see if there's any scratches that you need to go back and get out. Because you want to have your finish scratch free when you get done. You don't want to look at it and say, oh no. If you take it out in the sun, you will see scratches. If you take a digital camera, take a picture of your pen, finished pen, and then you take your picture and you blow your picture up and you look at it, it will see things your eye doesn't. You say, oh, this got scratches in it. You can't see it, but maybe somebody else can, but digital really shows up a lot of stuff. So anyhow, on here, see, I'm only using 4 of these grits, so I'm on the 3rd one now. I'm just double dipping tonight instead of doing the separate cups. So, wipe it down, look at it. Okay, looking pretty good so far. Feels good. I've got one more to go. there's a couple more steps after this.
What grit are you at now, roughly?
12,000.
12,000, okay.
Yeah, these start out coarser and they go to 12,000, so they've got wider spacing between the grits.
Right.
But they seem to work fine for just about everything. But if you have a solid black or a real dark, it shows everything like a mirror.
Yeah.
So then I will switch over to the micro mesh, because even though they start at a higher grit, they are closer together in grits, and you work up the steps. Yeah, it's like a 10-speed bike, you know. If you go from 3 to 7, it's a big jump, but if you go up through every gear, it's closer. So sometimes on the acrylics, on my last pad, I won't even spin it, because what we're trying to do is get rid of rotational scratches, and every time you spin it, you're putting more in. It's still an abrasive, even if it's 12,000. So sometimes I just do this one only like this. You know, I stop here and don't turn the lathe on again, and just do it by hand. You know, wet sand by hand. Because the rotational scratches really, really, really show up. So anyhow, so some people say, wow, yeah, let's put the pen together. Looks great, wonderful, they're happy. Pass these around. CA finish. When I apply, sometimes it's a little bit ridgy when you build it up, you know, using multiple coats of medium. I will take a skew, like I was doing on that, scrape a little bit negative, and the center part, I've scraped the humps off. You know, some people say, oh, you just sand it, but I want it to be, still want it to be round. Maybe I'll sand more here, trying to get a mark out of it. So I skew, scrape a little bit, and then over here is the finished product. So you can split them up, whatever. So on the CA, that's what I end up with. That's, you know, I call that a turned CA finish, because I'm actually turning the finish.
How many coats?
I'm glad you asked.
I do 3, so I was just wondering.
A lot of people have all different things. Some people are doing 8, some people do 20, all different things. But you need to finish up at the right size to fit your pen.
Right, yeah.
So on wooden pens or an acrylic/wood combo, I will turn them smaller, like 3 to 5 thousandths smaller than my pen hardware. And then I build it back up with CA, larger, and then I turn it back down to my actual size and polish and buff it. Same, when you're doing the CA, you're doing the exact same things here, you know, because CA is like an acrylic. So the same steps going through.
Now when you say you build it up, I mean, you put a coat on, then you just sand it down like it's 220, then put a coat on, and
No.
No?
No, that's like the thought of putting spackle on the wall. You know, they put it on and sand it off, they put it on and sand it off, put it on and sand it off. No, you put it on, you scrape the little boogers off, you put your next coat on, and you build it up. Then you sand it one time. So on a CA, very rarely will I sand in between coats.
Right.
Sometimes when you're building up your CA, and if you use an accelerator, you might spritz it a little too close, or you might have too big a drop and then it blisters up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to take that off before you continue on. But no, I do my build up. I do 2 coats of thin first to let it soak into the blank.
Yeah.
And then I go to the medium. And most of the time I'm taking my CA. I had some odorless that I bought too. It's very expensive, but I bought some.
Yeah.
But I will, usually I'll take one of these and I'll fold it up sort of like this. And I'll put the little plastic baggie on my finger. And a lot of people don't, but I don't like picking glue. I'll put the CA on the paper towel first, and then I'll run it under. Some people, they put it on here and they're going zzzz, and I'm like, why? It's not a friction polish.
Yeah.
You know, are you trying to build it up or make it as thin as you can get it? So I just, you know, lightly try to get it smooth, you know, just a little bit, that's it.
But you only have a certain amount of time, otherwise then it will grab that.
Oh yeah, so I usually use accelerator because I don't like to sit around too long.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm building up by size, not number of coats. So that's one thing. The odorless, seems to work okay. I have some odorless accelerator, and that seems to work as well. And CAW had some Easy Bond accelerator for a pump bottle instead of the spray can, and you can buy a, I don't know, whether it was an 8-ounce bottle,
Yes,
and then refill.
Yeah.
A whole lot cheaper than you can buy the cans. But I like the Hot Stuff, Satellite City Hot Stuff brand. I like that and this accelerator. I like the way they work together. Same brand, Satellite City. They work well for me. Some people don't like it, they use other brands. For me, I like those working together. When I use the other accelerator with this brand, it just doesn't seem to work the same. Not what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back to this blank here. You can see the shine on that now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is acrylic scratch remover. It's a polish. I have a can at home that somebody gave me. It was from Penn State, and it was like one-step polish or something like that, they called it. And I tried some, and I had it between my fingers, I started rubbing, and then I tried this. The other is coarser. It is like gritty. So it's like a coarse and a fine. And if I got this looking this good here with 12,000 wet sanded, why do I want to put the quartz stuff on it and back up? So this, like I said, several of the products that I'm using are very gross. So this acrylic scratch remover, I apply it like this. I used to turn the lathe on and spin it, but the same thing kept coming back. You're putting scratches in it. A polish is still abrasive. So I do this lengthwise only by hand. With my finger. I don't use a rag or anything. And I rub it out nice like that, get rid of the puddles. I let it dry. When you wax a car, you put the wax on it, you let it dry before you buff it off. Or at least when I used to do that. You don't do it wet. And I don't know if do y'all remember, when I was a kid, we used to, at Christmas time, we'd take the glass wax in the can, and you put the stencils on the windows, and you'd stencil the snowflakes and all this wreaths and stuff on the windows. Anyhow, and then later you'd buff it off. It was dry, and it was like car wax. It's a little bit of polish in it and a wax, and it makes things look great. So in my shop, I usually have a fan running, air going by it, so they dry rather quickly. Here, this is not quite dry yet. Doesn't take long. If you get coffee and come back, it's dry. And then I buff it off. I'll use a piece of cotton t-shirt material, like this, and I will just buff it lengthwise by hand again. I'm not turning the lathe back on, because if you do, you're putting scratches back in. So now, you look at that and you say, wow, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to keep this one. But I'm going to go even farther. Now, you look at it real close, you can still see scratches in it. I don't know whether you can, is that okay in the light?
Let me just come in real close on it.
I'm going to sit there so it doesn't wiggle.
That's pretty close, so it's filling up.
Okay?
I don't see any.
Okay,
I'm
so
looking at the reflection, so that's usually what tells you.
now when I'm doing a CA finish, I don't finish with the bushings. I did in the beginning. I'd glue the bushings on, then you try to take a knife or a parting tool or point of a skew and you try to cut the CA to get the bushing loose. Well, you're chewing up the ends of it again. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of that tonight. That's another demo. But I CA between centers. I put my blank between centers like this, and that's when I put my CA on it for my wood blanks for my CA finish. They make finishing bushings that are made out of Delrin. There's a couple of different types. There's some pointed ones like this, or there's some that are made like those bushings I just had. But I don't use them. I just stick it between centers like this, turn it on, put my CA on, build it up, and then you do your sanding. And then I put my sanding disc back on here, put my drill chuck back in and my rod, and I'll go back and I'll sand that end again because some of that CA has crawled around the ends. And if you push your pen together with that CA around on the ends, you're going to pop that CA and you're going to see white around here. So it needs to be off flush. So after the CA is put on it, I dress the ends again with that sander, and then I blot the ends again with the CA at the end. So let's kick this up a little bit more. Once again, Barry Gross acrylic buffing system that he has. Your center right here in the end of the rod. This one, instead of your Beal, which uses triple E, white diamond, carnauba, on this one you have one rouge. And here it is. You have one rouge. You have the blue rouge, and in your different rouges, you know, the triple E, white diamond, this is finer, and it's designed more for plastics. When you look on some of the websites, the blue is what they recommend for the plastics. So I'm not going 100 miles an hour here, but I loaded a little bit. You don't want too much on there. My wheel was already coated with some as it was. Always use a pencil or a rod or a screwdriver or something, because if you hold it and the wheel catches it, it's gone. You might damage your blank. So on here, I'm not doing this number because I don't want to scratch. It's all still got marks in it. I want to get them out. So I'm buffing this way, linear to the blank with that. Occasionally I'll go back, you know, I'll put more on it if I have to. So I'm just sitting here spinning it. I got my thumb under it. My daughter used to find on the larger tubes, the sharp edge of the tube would be, you know, cutting her skin or something. So it's like, put your nail under there, you know, do it that way. So anyhow, that polishes it on up even higher, and gives you your finish. And then you can just pop over to the clean wheel. On the Beal, you end up with your carnauba wax on your third wheel, and sometimes you end up with a wax buildup, and I wish I had an extra clean wheel after that to do my final. Otherwise I'd take some t-shirt, some cotton, and buff by hand after the carnauba wax. So on here, I don't know, this will be your finished blank ready to assemble. And I'll pass it around here.
Now I'm looking at the reflection from the light, and it's
That's what I was
smooth.
wondering.
It's a nice smooth. No, it's a nice smooth reflection.
So anyhow, that's my process. I might not have buffed it long enough, but that gives you a nice blank to mount up. So all of these were buffed. You know, instead of a straight cut, you know, I shaped these more. Right up in here, I had my round carbide up on edge like a skew, you know, cutting in here like that. And just did a little detail work on the end. But you just can't beat, you know, a nice shine on stuff. So anyhow, let's see. Here's one thing I didn't show you earlier. When you're gluing your tubes into the blanks, you know, glue inside the tubes is the enemy. You know, if you have CA in there and then you try to press your pin parts in and it's tight because of the glue, sometimes you crack a blank. This is called base plate wax, and it's a thin sheet of wax, and I just take my tube and I press my tube down into it, and it just cuts a little plug and seals the ends of the tubes. Some people would use potato or apple or plumber's putty or
I use the square wax. I forget sheet stuff.
or Play-Doh or whatever.
Yeah.
So this works real good. It pops out easy. And also on a lot of blanks, a lot of pens, I will file with a chainsaw file, round file, the inside of the tube so my hardware goes in easier. Because some of them are too tight and you press it in, and for example, a true stone or something like that, it's not like wood, it doesn't have any elasticity to it. And also, when we were talking about glues, some people use polyurethane glues. So this is a tapered reamer. You can use that inside your tube to help ream it a little bit. It doesn't cut aggressively. Usually I'll use a chainsaw file first, and then I use this to clean it up some. I also had this old, I guess, countersink. And I use that inside of tubes to bevel a little bit at the top. So those things help your parts go in easier. Some people, if your parts go in too easy, or your top clip will slide around on your pen, you need to glue it in. So some people use a blue Permatex. I use just a tiny little dot of epoxy and a little bit up under the clip, a little bit when I'm sliding a part in. Just a tiny bit, just enough to lock it together. You don't want somebody calling you back, oh, the clip's turning around, and they've spun the clip around and made a groove in the pen, in the finish. So you don't want that.
Not to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I picked up a deburring tool
Yes,
at Home Depot.
right,
It's got
that you spin around.
You spin it around.
Right. Yeah, I think that's working just right up at the top edge of the
Just-
tube, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't do anything down in there far.
No.
Yes.
Keep it.
I just happen to have this old thing I found when I was cleaning out my parents' place, and I'm just using that. It's steel, it's harder than the
Yeah.
brass. It does the same thing. On my blanks, when I knock the corners off of them, you can use a disc sander, whatever. It's just a scrap of wood. I lay my blank in it, and then on the bandsaw I can just nip off the edges, roll it over, nip off the corners, when I'm prepping those for turning. Like I said, get rid of the corners first, you got less chance of having it come apart. Always have some blue tape handy. Double-sided tape is great. You can stick stuff on and turn finials for tops of the pens. You can make your own finials and stuff like that, or turning medallions, pendants. The tape is great. Pen tube insertion tool. When you're doing the CA, you're sticking it in. I don't use these anymore. I've got two of them, I don't use them. I bought one of those pen vices to hold your pen blanks for your drill press. Don't use it. I had a benchtop drill press. Didn't have enough height above the table, for it to work on a longer
yeah.
blank. Or I'd have to move the table up, for long blanks, and then, I had to just build a box underneath to make it work. I finally have a taller drill press, but my drill press, too much play in it. Drilling
Yeah.
wasn't as accurate as the lathe.
What are you using to put your pieces together? Using the
Most of
Pen
the time
press?
I use a pen press, a lever action pen press, but sometimes on that, when you're putting pressure on it, you see your pen and the parts of the pen press bowing up, and you're not pressing straight. Some people use their lathe, and Woodcraft sells these little poly Delrin inserts, or you can just turn your own wood pieces, or they use a drill press. Drill press makes a great press. You can control your pressure very good here or with a drill press, better than I think than the lever model. And but I don't like doing that because out at my lathes in the shop, and if I drop one little piece of that pen, I've got to go buy a new kit because it's gone. Okay, I like to press them in the house. Harbor Freight has a small bearing press that has a little handle that you pull, and it's just got a rod, a gear driven rack and pinion comes down, and a lot of people are using those for pen presses because you got good feel on it.
That's why I had an arbor press from.
Yeah.
No, I forget, but it's
Uh-huh.
good about
Right, it's good and solid, and it works.
heavy.
Nothing fancy.
Right.
Some people will use a bench vise clamp, and anything's a clamp.
Sure.
Paraffin, wonderful. slick up your ways on your bed. See how nice that slides now? Somebody, next month, they're gonna take this, they're gonna slide it back, and it's gonna go flying. You know, unless this dog catches it. So just slick up your parts, especially the top of your tool rest, so your tools run nice and smooth. Other tool rests, this one was made by a pin turner, and the head unscrews off of it. You can put different heads on it, but you know, stainless and just hardened, smooth, slick. You know, your skew up on the edge is not going to nick it up. And you know, just a little bit of wax and a rag, and your chisel just slides so nice. You know, things like that just make it fun, make it easier. You know, grinder once in a while, diamond stone in between. You know, works great. I don't know what else I brought. Yeah, you got your LED lights there. We bought some at our club. I don't know, oh, it's down there. I don't know if you've seen these or not. IKEA, $10 light with this kind of base on it, this weighted base. So our club guys, we do a group buy, and we'll get like 20, 30 of them at a time, and a Harbor Freight magnet, and a little wooden washer, and voila. And on some of them, they drill the side and they put a little piece of aluminum bar stock to make a little lever to pop them off with. And works great, you know, same as this. So these are just so handy. And for $10 plus your parts, I think we had, I don't know, maybe $15 in it total, plus our time. But it's a great group buy item. But it was in-store only. It was not a catalog order from IKEA.
Okay.
So somebody has to run down there and pick them up. But they're very handy. I've got them on my bandsaw, on my lathe. My wife has one at her sewing table, and when I'm in the kitchen setting at the dining room table, you know, putting pin parts together or measuring parts, I pull one of them out so I can see what I'm doing. So just works out real good. So anyhow, you want to have some question and answer, so it's about time for that, I think.
Anybody got any questions?
You said when you put the tube into the, whatever piece you're gluing up, you don't use that little gadget anymore? What do you use?
Now, well, I'm using epoxy now, wood and acrylic,
Okay.
totally. So I've just, I've got a toothpick, I'm mixing my epoxy.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you know, when you want to mix your epoxy on something, you know, I think everybody here gets all these junk flyers in the mail. These cards, you know, that you don't want, and you throw them in the recycle. They make great little cards for mixing epoxy on. You know, just a tiny little bit, but they're free. They send them to you, you don't even have to pay for them. It's great. You know, it's just like address labels you get in the mail free. So anyhow, I just mix up a little bit with toothpick, and I take the toothpick and I put it on the tube and spread it around. I put the tube in from one end, and when I'm doing that, the tube has the wax in it. So I slide it in from one end, I turn my blanket around, I go in from the other end, I'm twisting, and once I get almost all the way in, I take my toothpick and I put a little bit more glue up around the top of it, and I just take the toothpick and just slide it on in. One thing, drilling, I don't know if you had this happen before, drill press or lathe. If you're drilling and you're going all the way through the blank, there's a good chance on the acrylic blanks or burls that your drill bit will push out the bottom of the blank. So the better thing to do is to make your blank long and mark where your tube's going to go. Mark your drill bit so you can drill farther than the tube but not out the end. And once you get down there, don't push too hard. You know, heat causes problems. Some of the acrylics are softer than others. There's one thing I wanted to show you. And once I find them, I will share that with you. But leave it long, then you can just bandsaw it off and cut into it. Anyhow, I think it's about time to
Yeah.
get on to what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yep.
Okay. I hope everybody learned something,
Oh, yeah.
you know, just a little bit.